everybody, it's Anchorman here back with another episode of The Top Shelf on the Inner Circle Network. Thank you guys for checking in today. We had a lot to talk about, but today we are going to be talking about console generations and the announcement of the PlayStation 4 Pro. So just briefly, everything they announced at this PlayStation meeting, which was kind of overshadowed by Apple's meeting, just a little bit. With the announcement, the first thing they talked about is the PlayStation 4 Slim, which is going to be coming out in a few days for $300. And there's no real updates to it, so really comparing it to the Xbox One Slim really isn't fair, because they didn't really add any new features, and it's basically just a PlayStation 4. The announcement and the main focus of this entire meeting, the PlayStation meeting they called it, was the PlayStation 4 Pro, which is announced. It's going to be coming out November 10th, 2016 at $400. Now, earlier this year, there were a lot of rumors about what this thing was going to be. A lot of people were making speculation about this entire meeting. There were some people out there, I'm not going to give them any names because they're just fake insider types. They were saying, oh, Rockstar was going to be at this thing, and Rockstar was not in attendance from what we could see. They did not make any sort of presence known at all on stage. There was a rumor there was going to be Red Dead Redemption 2 or something like that was supposed to show up, and no, not at all. There was a lot of rumors about what the specs were going to be. They said since the announcement that it was going to be the announcement of Neo was delayed from E3 2016, that they were going to be putting it out here, and that they were going to actually, since they had delayed it, they were going to beef up the specs of the Neo. The rumor at the earlier time of this year, about in February, I believe, was 4.2 teraflops for the PlayStation 4 Neo, but it actually turned out that was entirely true. The specs of the Neo, not the Neo, I'm sorry, I got used to saying Pro. The specs of the Pro is going to be 4.2 teraflops. It's roughly going to be about 2 times as powerful as the PlayStation 4, according to Mark Cerny. And like I said, all the rumors were true about this thing. They did not make any upgrades at all. They didn't increase the teraflops like some were wanting you to believe. And I kind of want to talk about a few things about this scenario and this presentation besides this that I feel like aren't being talked about enough or really focused about, because these are very important aspects. The first of which is dates. In a 3-month span alone, Sony is launching 3 new pieces of hardware. They're launching the Slim in a few days, they're launching the Pro in November, and don't forget about PlayStation VR. They are asking you to spend at least $800 this holiday on just hardware alone. And that's just assuming you're only going to buy the Slim or the Pro, not both. That is a lot of money to be asking you to spend in such a short time frame. You're making people have to make choices now instead of getting both. If it was one thing where it was, we just had the Pro and we just had the Neo, that would be doable. People could decide what they want to pick between, but people who have mixed feelings or don't know what they want, it's going to be a tough sell. It really is. And there's also another hidden cost in there that we'll talk about a little bit later. So, also, another thing is that there's no 4K Blu-ray drive, but the Xbox has one, which is kind of odd, honestly. I mean, the Xbox Slim has a 4K Blu-ray drive, which is really odd because doesn't Sony own a portion of Blu-ray? How do you, as a 4K device, not support 4K Blu-ray disc and go around preaching about 4K? Especially when at the beginning of the PS4 generation, as this is technically an upgraded version of the PlayStation 4, especially at the beginning when you focus so much on disc-based games, when you did this whole little thing to spite Microsoft about the whole, like, this is how you share games on PlayStation, and doing like, oh, here, let me pass this around kind of thing. That was really silly, and now you're not focusing on it, you're focusing on streaming content, which is just kind of confusing, honestly. It doesn't make any sense on how you could go from that. The other issue I kind of want to talk about is the absence of the word native when they were talking about 4K. I know a lot of the PC guys were rolling their eyes when Mark Cerny was talking about 4K, talking about PlayStation has maxed out 1080p. It's like, no. the PC guys were kind of losing it on Twitter over that. But just notice the entire time they did not say the word native when they talked about the resolutions of their games or anything else. They were talking about custom 4K. And I'll talk about this a little bit, just a few minutes later, but like it's already starting. I mean, you're seeing things like Horizon Zero Dawn is confirmed to be 4K upscaled. They are not going for 4K native. They will be upscaling the game to be 4K, and they will be using the power that Sony gave them. Now, I love this concept. I love the fact that Sony is not mandating that they have to be 1080p like with the original PS4, where it was you had to hit this resolution or you weren't going to be able to, ship the game. And that is a major problem. Something I was really pissed off about, because some games would suffer. The frame rate would suffer as a result, or they make certain changes to it that just didn't make the game look any better. And it could have, but in this case, they're letting developers make those choices to use the power to update the graphics. And now there is a downside of that, is that developers may not want to do that, or developers might just say like, nah, why can't we just use the power for this? And that's going to be another licensed version. It's going to be a slight problem, but I think something the Sony will figure out on terms of cost and other things like that. But at the same time, I mean, it's just it's hilarious because it's just becoming what happened in 2013. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, remember all those articles about resolution? Every time a new game was announced, it was coming on both Xbox and PlayStation, that it was going to be, oh, well, the Xbox version is actually 720p, but it was upscaled to 1080p, and no one had a problem there. It just seems kind of funny. And I mean, it's just this whole announcement thing. I think the only two things I thought were really appealing so far is I like the name PlayStation 4 Pro. I felt like that conveyed the right message across that Sony needed to get, is that this is a PlayStation 4. This is just a remastered version of the PlayStation 4 with better specs and better abilities and a little more features. And the other thing I really did like is I think the $400 price point is very attractive. I think it's a very good price point. I mean, they clearly had prior success with that price point, and it worked out very well for them whenever the PS4 originally launched. I think a buddy of mine summed it up best by saying, we were literally being shown footage our current media was incapable of displaying properly. I mean, Sony is trying to extol the virtues of 4K to a crowd who are incapable of seeing the benefits of 4K. These are just spitball figures here, but maybe 15% of the gaming population has a 4K TV right now. You aren't just asking consumers to go out and buy a PlayStation 4 Pro, but a 4K TV to be able to see what it looks like. And I know Microsoft's doing the same exact thing. Like, they were very keen on saying, like, if you don't have a 4K TV, do not buy this product. And they were very keen on that. And they basically gave you a year to pick up a 4K TV, which is a little better than 2 months. And before you come out here talking about HDR and how every PS4 is getting HDR support, cool. First off, that's a great thing. That's something that's really a sweet thing that Sony did to not leave people in the dust. It kind of takes away another selling point of the PlayStation Pro, though. But first off, you have to have an HDR capable TV to see anything, which means you're going to have to go buy a 4K TV that does HDR, which some 4K TVs don't. And that's another $400 Sony is asking you to spend before you can experience HDR. And not just that, but from what I understand, the developers will have to go back and patch HDR support into their old games for you to actually see the benefits of HDR as well. And I mean, Sony and Microsoft have just completely flipped. Remember back in 2013 when PlayStation 4 baited Microsoft back in February, talking about PlayStation 4, but didn't give any hard specs, just kind of gave you some vague ideas of it. And Microsoft went second, only to be upstaged by Sony at E3. This is the same exact scenario. Microsoft baited Sony at E3 with vague specs, and Sony delayed their announcement until now. And they came out here with underpowered specs already to the Scorpio, which Microsoft will launch next year. What Microsoft essentially did was tell everyone 6 teraflops, and now that Sony can't hit that with the Pro, people who want power are now just going to wait for 2017 for Scorpio. I mean, if you wanted power, you should probably just go to PC instead. But I mean, hey, in the console space, this is what we're talking about. And don't tell me PS4 Pro isn't meant to compete with Scorpio. Scorpio and Pro are both mid-cycle generation upgrades. Microsoft is abandoning the prior concept of generations. This is one big generation of them. It's an entirely fair comparison for Scorpio and Pro because they fulfill the same job: to introduce gamers to 4K gaming. Slim to slim, upgrade to upgrade. It's only fair. But anyway, guys, that's just my general thoughts on this kind of stuff. I wanted to throw this out there before everyone else did. We'll go back into a more interesting topic later, probably 2 weeks from now. But yeah, just go check out all the stuff on ticgn.com, and I will see you guys later on the next Top Shelf episode.